Yeah, Roberto, it's a pleasure to have you with us today.
Okay, you are Claude Cellier, you are the founder and the president of Merging Technologies, and we are really happy to be here today because we want to know all the stuff that is manufactured by Merging, like the Pyramids, the Horus, the Happy, and so many other. So I think that the first question is about the history of merging and how was the translation from the analog world in audio to digital world.
Good question.
And the handicaps. And what about the competition in that days with other brands? So when you want to start?
Oh, I'm happy to start right away. So, to come back to a quick disclaimer, I'm the founder, but not the only one. I had 3 partners when we started merging. I initially started alone in 1990, was then joined by the son of Mr. Kuleski, the second son of Mr. Kuleski, to whom I owe a lot. Unfortunately, he left us tragically 5 years ago now, this March month. He was a brilliant genius. I mean, all the Kudelski family is a quite phenomenal family. And I'm mentioning him because before he joined me, at the very early days of merging in 1990, I spent the 10 previous years working for Nagra Kudelski.
To Nagra?
I spent, this was my learning curve, with the big boss back then, who was Stefan Kudelski. And I did all my early discovery of audio surrounded by Stefan Kudelski, which was a phenomenal training for me, because he had this sense for both craziness and also very solid, very reliable equipment that could withstand anything. You know, you could take a lorry and drive over a Nagra recorder and it would still keep on working. You know? I have histories of my father using Nagra, because that's also how I started to meet Kudelski, because my father did recordings and he used the Nagra too. So he had no more batteries and it would still record, you know, even with no batteries and things. I mean, this was a fantastic learning curve for me. So I essentially finished my studies in 1980 at the Institute of Technology in Lausanne. I studied electricity. I did my diploma working on one of the first vocoders. This was my diploma work.
In vocoders?
Vocoders. At the same time as Fairlight on the other side of the planet was also doing the first vocoders on the planet. But then I didn't pursue that electronic instrument business, because I was also doing synthesizers as well as a hobby during my studies. So I joined Nagra Kudelski, and then I learned what it was to take analog circuitry to its best. And it was quite interesting, because over these 10 years I spent some of my time in the commercial side of things, and then gradually more in the engineering department doing R&D. I spent a lot of time working on the new thing at that time was to put timecode on recorders, so that you could easily sync up picture and sound.
With SMPT timecode.
SMPT timecode.
Yeah.
EBU, SMPT. That was my primary mission. So all the equipment we had Nagra 4S, etc. We moved to do the same equipment but with timecode. So very partial beginning of digital, if you want, because there were 2 tracks, left and right, plus a center track, which was digital essentially, timecode. And the more the years passed, the more digital we knew we would have to implement. And the last 1 or 2 years at Nagra, I also participated in the first digital Nagra. So I was starting to as an early engineer, to discover this transition from analog to digital. And then I left Nagra Kudeski. This was a little bit of crazy thinking on my part. I said, I want to start my own company, which I named Merging, because I wanted to merge different things, computer, video, audio, together, software and hardware. And very early on, we started in the company doing graphics card for the Amiga from Commodore. That was the beginning of Merging, because it's not that I was fed up with audio, but I wanted to leave Nagra doing something else, not be competing or whatever with Nagra. So the first 3 years we did video, computer video. We had the first 24 million color graphics card for computers, for Commodore Amiga, with picture-in-picture, video capture, etc., and a full software suite. And it went very well. That was the beginning of Merging, and I thought myself, oh, it's easy to start up a company, in the garage. I started in the garage of my father.
You started in the garage?
I started in the garage of my father. I had no money. I wasn't. It was a beautiful, interesting job at Nagra, but it didn't pay so well, honestly. That's probably also one of the reasons why I decided to quit after 10 years. So I started really in the garage the first few months, and then went a bit further. My wife found a rental 20 square meter locale in the railway station of the city the village where I was living, so next door. So I had all these Japanese girls come, can we buy tickets for the train, etc. While I was coding electronic stuff for this computer card. What happened is 93, Commodore went bankrupt.
Yeah.
Instantly, no business. Finished.
Yeah.
And we had no other products. The company, we had just incorporated, and I was then joined by 3 founding members. One of them is still with us, Dominique Brulart. He's currently enjoying himself on the beach in Vietnam. But the rest of the time, he's still very active with us, and he has been instrumental on many of the software products we did, including, of course, Pyramix first, then Ovation, which is a live master playout system for theme parks, museums, and broadcasters, which is a different part of our market segments. There was Marcus Erne with us, and Jean-Marc Porchet as well. So I'm not the only founder. That's my first disclaimer. Then what happened with us is we have 3 years of experience doing video stuff and computer stuff, electronic boards, but zero money and zero new product in the pipeline. So I had this idea of doing a workstation already for a few years back then, and I said, okay, let's do rapidly the audio part of the workstation. The entire workstation was supposed to be video and audio. So we started working on the audio, and I thought, let's do that quickly. In 1 year, we've done. That is the product that we still sell today, which is called Pyramix.
Is that now?
And it didn't take 1 year. We had version 1 in 95. At the same time, that we had Microsoft spinning out their Windows 95 operating system. And since we had this experience of betting on a product like Commodore, who vanished from the earth in a few weeks' time, you know, I said, I think with Microsoft-based product, we should be safe for a longer term. That's why we did PRMX to work on Windows right from the beginning, on 32-bit operating system right away. So, and still today, PRMX is based on this original concept and design, and it worked quite fine. But then, that was version 1. And back then, we had Sonic Solutions, we had Diaxis, we had DAR, we had so many other competing digital audio workstations that we were not matching, you know, the level of sophistication that all these earlier generation, including Pro Tools, had. So it took us another 5 years, at least, to have PRMX version 3 that was clearly not only matching, but almost ahead of the game in terms of digital audio workstation software. So it's always taking more time than you anticipate. So if I have a recommendation, be of course ambitious when you start a company, but be cautious at the same time with your time estimates.
Yeah.
So that's a bit the early history of merging. Then we did a lot of software back then, but also we were pretty good at using DSP. So we did also DSP cards. We were already using 32-bit floating point DSP right from the beginning, whereas other like Pro Tools used 24-bit fixed point. We right from the beginning, PRMX was using as a mix engine 32-bit floating point, and this has worked great up to today. I mean, you can do 64-bit now, but with 32-bit, we're pretty good already. There's very rare occasion where you need more than 32-bit floating point to have the highest quality mixing engine. So, DSP cards on the hardware side and PRMX on the software side. So we since early days, merging has always have had the two competences of doing hardware, but also
the
software. And when you know how to do hardware, you can do better software and vice versa, because you can optimize the software to take advantage of the hardware and vice versa. So, but it's also more effort, because you have to be very to spread more your investment over hardware plus software to be able to do both in parallel. And sometimes it's a lot of investment, particularly software. Software can take so long time.
And why do you think that the 32-bit floating was better than the 24-bit? Because even the audio is in 24-bit. Then the process...
Remember, back then, we were in CD time. That was 16-bit. So already 24-bit was supposed to be good enough, by far, to produce 16-bit CD, which was already considered as a professional quality medium. Yeah. As a matter of fact, since then, the quality rather went down than up. When you compare CD quality with today's MP3 or even AAC, I wouldn't say the quality has improved much. For most people listening to audio coming out of their telephone or coming out there. So we have to be always cautious when we talk about higher numbers than 16-bit. But for production side, it makes sense to have 24-bit at least. So definitely there is a good headroom in 24-bit. But today, we are on the verge of soon bringing out products which will have almost 24-bit quality on the mic preamplifier side.
Mm-hmm.
And then doing the processing, the mixing in 24-bit is no longer enough. You need at least 4 bits of reserve when you do EQ, when you do dynamics compression, when you mix together 64 channels. So it's time for us to consider more than the 24-bit that used to be. And even Pro Tools now, 20 years later or 15 years later, went finally to 32-bit floating point. But we were there much earlier than Pro Tools.
Mm-hmm.
And 32-bit gives you the comfort of being able to have the required quality of 24-bit. As a matter of fact, with floating point, you even have 25-bit of resolution, because there's the implied 1 at the beginning of the floating point number. So it's actually 25-bit resolution when we talk about 32-bit floating point. But then you have an extra headroom, which means you never have to be very cautious about not overloading internally a gain, an EQ, a mix, because you cannot overload.
Yes, but the floating point, so you can have the audio in 24 bits, you can process internal in 32 fixed bits, but even more bits, floating representation of the numerical value. Did you think that it is needed, really?
You do, for instance, an EQ.
Yes, but...
in digital, when you design
but
a
how
digital
many
EQ.
dBs? 24?
32 bits
32
not enough.
dBs?
No, it's not enough. Not enough. You can't do a good EQ with only 32 bit. A standard EQ in digital, you cannot be anywhere close to the quality of analog. To have a good quality EQ, for instance, you need way more bit. With 64-bit floating point, you're fine. Or you have to change the topology of your EQ and make what we have, EQX, for instance, which my co-founder, Marcus Erne, developed, that was 20 years almost ago, had a state variable topology. It's a bit more complex topology, but then you can still stay in 32-bit without the difficult part of making sure you have low distortion and low noise at low frequencies. But if you don't go to the extent of making special topologies, 32-bit is not enough for certain things. You're right. Yeah, you need more.
But the bits you use, because you are carry every zoom and process, or because with every process you need more resolution?
It's because when you do typically EQ, when you place a pole, of your filter near the unit circle, which is close to DC, so assume we do sampling rate of 192 kilohertz, and you set a filter at 20 hertz. This is so damn close to the unity circle that the resolution
is the
not enough.
You are referring with the circle to the setup plane?
To the Z plane.
Yeah.
Yes. You're so close to the unit circle that you need a tremendous amount of resolution to avoid that your EQ doesn't goof away.
To go unstable.
To remain stable even. Yeah.
Okay.
That's the theory behind the short.
Okay, that was a personal question because I want to know.
Sure.
Okay, so
typically, coming back to why we wanted 32-bit, it's because with 32-bit, the user is more comfortable. He doesn't need to pay attention. Do I have enough headroom when I do my mix, etc.? It's more fluent for the end user to operate the system, but it gets us, usually for most mixing, dynamics compression, it gives us enough resolution, 25-bit resolution, which is Okay. Now, 25 years later, we of course now thinking to do more than 32-bit float. I cannot speak too much about our future, but there's new products coming down the road which will have different ways of using bits for ultra high quality processing. Yeah. But meanwhile, in year 2000, because we talk about number bits, we went the opposite way. Some of you remember maybe that in the early 2000s, Sony and Philips decided to bring out Super Audio CD.
Yes.
And as we got involved in that too, we had a very interesting time learning to do good quality audio with one bit only.
Yeah.
That's the opposite way.
Yeah, direct stream.
Dealing with DSD.
Yeah, the direct stream.
And right from the beginning with Philips, we were from the point of view that doing processing at this very phenomenal high rate of 2.8 megahertz with small number of bits, like 8 bits, which was the Sony way of doing things, that it would be preferable to convert DSD to do the mixing, to do the reverberation, to do the EQ, to do all the editing, etc., to convert it to what we called DXD, Digital Extreme Definition, which happened to be 8 times 44.1 kilohertz.
Yes.
Or 352.8 kilohertz. So, in the year 2000, 2001, we got involved with Philips to design, manufacture, and develop the first DXD workstation, which was operating in 352.8 kilohertz. So almost twice 192 kilohertz. That was a very interesting time for us to reach the limit of auditory threshold. We made many tests, listening tests. Did it sound better? Was it getting worse? By doing this translation from 1-bit 64fs to 32-bit 8fs, or was it similar? And we spent days and days doing auditive tests to check that there was no degradation. Mm-hmm. And as a matter of fact, some of the tests concluded that it was actually even more neutral than doing it in only 8-bit at 2.8 megahertz. That's a long time ago.
So in 384 kilohertz?
384 or 352. We rather selected 352 because that was a multiple.
Yeah.
The same
the
44.1 kilohertz base rate for DSD.
Yeah. And how many bits?
24 bit.
24.
Yeah.
Okay.
But we had to invent everything. The converters, there were no chips doing that.
And it sounds better than a 2.8 megahertz 1 bit.
It's something I would not say better.
Different.
There were some tests where 1 or 2 golden ears could tell the difference. Yeah, that's. You have to stay modest, you know.
Yeah.
We're not talking of something that immediately strikes you.
Yeah, like black and white.
Yeah. And you have to be very careful when you do these tests because they have to be blind tests.
Yeah.
If you don't do blind tests,
it's a nonsense.
You have a blue LED syndrome. The blue LED is on. It sounds more neutral, more crystal clear.
Yeah.
And when the blue LED is off, then you say, I hear the difference. Because your brain, our brain, everybody's brain, is made to convince himself that he can hear the difference.
Auto.
Auto-suggestion. It's a fundamental quality, but also defect of our brain, And our brain doesn't need much to trick himself gently, into thinking this and being convinced. Absolutely, I'm convinced that this sounds better than this, etc. But when you do things blind, things get more interesting, scientifically, I mean.
Yeah.
So what we did is invent many things, because we had to make AD converters, D2A converters, software, EQ, dynamics, compression, everything that could operate at this back then it was phenomenal rates, 352.8 kilohertz. The computers back then were not those we have today, and we were really always longing for new chips from Intel, faster Pentium processors, etc., because there was never enough power for recording enough tracks. But meanwhile, today we 15 years later approximately, and I have to confess, Intel did a great job following Moore's law, because we have Moore's law stating that every 18 months, roughly, the processing power doubles for the same cost, basically.
Yeah.
And Intel did it great up to recently, I'd say.
And then you can work with your 384.
Now you can do 64 channels of 352.8 kilohertz in a single pyramid system, which back then was a big dream. 64.
64.
64 channels. Today we can do 64 channels. But back then it was limited to 8, and then a bit later on 16. Which was okay for many projects, because many times our equipment got used to record acoustic events, live music, classic jazz, flamenco, things like that.
And you don't need so many tracks.
And you can do very good recordings with 16 microphones. You don't necessarily need more than that. Of course, sometimes it's nice for a big symphony orchestra to have more. So we had to do ourselves the converters, the A to D, the D to A, and the software to have all this ecosystem be ready to produce the first SACDs. And then there was the battle between DVD audio and SACD, and finally the SACD won against the DVD audio, who disappeared, essentially, at the end of the day. But then again, we're talking about niche markets, very small niche markets. Music market isn't a big volume business compared to telephone, compared to bank, to insurance. We both know it's a small business. On top of that, the classical or the jazz are the small, 2, 3, 4, 5% at most of the entire music business. So we're talking about niche markets here. But for us, being based in Switzerland, this was the ideal scenario. It's smaller volume, yes, admit, but it was enough for us to entertain a good relationship with our customers, and those customers, some of them are still with us, 15 years later. And some of them won a couple of Grammys, which is also one thing which we love when our own product, it's not our product, it's what gets through our product wins a Grammy. Because in the end, what we do is not the product, it's not the converters, it's not the boards like the electronic. The really interesting product is the software, the music, the emotion that is at a moment captured with these boards, with these electronics, with this software, and gets to our brain. This is the
but
part
the
in our business that gets us
is
motivated.
A little part of your equipment.
Yeah, it's a small part. I think the much larger responsibility is the one of the musician, the conductor, sometimes the producer who organizes all that. But it's a good thing.
You are a little part.
Yeah, yeah, we are a little world.
Yeah.
So, going closer to now, we were in 2001, 2002, that was DSD time. And closer to now, 2018, we started about 7, 8 years ago, another revolution. We decided that merging had to gain the knowledge, the know-how, to master IP, transmission of audio over IP. We felt back then that would be the next major revolution. One generation ago, when I was a young student, we had this first generation going from analog to digital. And I believe we are right now in a second generation revolution, which is going from point to network. Not everybody needs network. If you are just alone doing music in your home, USB is fine. You have a little USB converter in your computer, and that's fine. But as soon as you are more than one musician, assume you are a band of 4, bassist, guitarist, keyboard, and the singer, and you want to play together. Already then, networking becomes to be genuinely interesting, because if you can have instantly, with low latency, not only your own microphone in your headphone, but you can mix what the others do with their own microphone preamplifier, each one having its own little box that captures microphone. Then each one can have his own mix done without requiring a major studio to go around, etc. And these are the sort of things that networking is good about. It shares among everybody who connects to the network. Network is very easy these days. A gigabit switch doesn't cost much, and gigabit gives you a lot of channels at disposal. Like over 500 channels at 48 kilohertz. So you have all those streams produced by different musicians, and each one can gather them, say, oh, I'm interested to get this channel from that box, and it can be in different rooms, it can be on the 7th floor and on the basement, and as long as all these are connected together via a network, you can instantly monitor everything and mix everything together locally. And this is only one of the interesting parts. But if you have a huge organization like TV or radio, it's even more interesting that any device can be monitored from anywhere in the building. I need today to listen to that microphone connected to this microphone preamplifier in room 307. You can reach to it without having to go through a major central router. It's all over the network, streams present on the network, on which you just need to raise a flag, say, I want to listen to that, and that's it. So networking is at the core of all the new strategy of products that we're designing, both on the hardware and the software side. And we started 7 years ago with Horus, which has a gigabit Ethernet port running Ravenna protocol, which meanwhile part of Ravenna has become AES standard, which is AES 67, which was signed off and published 3 years ago. And AES 67 is now the core component of SMPTE 2110, ST 2110, which is video over IP. So it forms a very good core of open standards for the whole industry to migrate to IP-based audio. And we decided early that would be the future of merging. So all the new products we are designing even today are focusing on the qualities and on the comfort that network is bringing. And I think we only, at the very beginning of this revolution, we are the first initial understanding the benefits of what it will bring.
When you split the audio stream and you encapsulate it in an IP protocol with the headers and such things, it is known that there are some latency and some jitter over the network.
Yeah.
How do you solve this?
So intriguingly, there is paradoxically less jitter on the final products over the network as when using standard word clock. Let me explain that. At the heart of AES67 is a standard called IEEE 1588, which was first developed in 2005. First version was in 2003. The second version was then published in 2008. So it's quite recent, it's just 10 years ago. And IEEE 1588 has a mechanism that is called PTP, Precision Time Protocol, that allows each equipment in a network to synchronize itself to a so-called grandmaster. There is one piece of equipment that will automatically be elected as the grandmaster. It's the equipment that says on the network, I'm able to be that precise with so little jitter, or I'm an atomic clock, or I'm a GPS controlled clock, or whatever. And whoever says has the best or lowest jitter is then elected as the grandmaster and served as making sure all the other equipment slave to that major grandmaster clock. And all the other equipment have to have a local clock, a slave clock, that then is synchronized to this master clock. The good thing about that is that you can even avoid the delays that you have with standard word clock. When you send a word clock from equipment A to B, assume it's 10 meters long or 30 meters long, you'll have 100 nanoseconds of delay already just by the speed of electrons over copper, close to speed of light. And with that PTP mechanism, this is compensated for, because there are clock signals, very short clock signals, much shorter than audio signals, which take more bytes to convey. Very short burst, every twice a second or 4 times a second, that says, this is my time. And the other says, this is my time now.
And they have a phase logged.
And you can compensate for the delay of these signals going from one equipment to the
because they know the distance.
Because they can measure how long it takes for the response from the slave device to go back to the master device.
And they have an internal phase logged loop.
Exactly.
And they synchronize with that packets.
And the best of that, the resolution of that is 1 nanosecond.
1 nanosecond of jitter.
Yeah. The resolution. Now, I'm not saying that all equipment will have one less or better than 1 nanosecond. As a matter of fact, it's difficult to achieve. But theoretically, we can align all equipment almost within 1 nanosecond. Theoretically. Practically, it's about 35 or 40 or 50 good equipment can achieve that, which can be much better than using word clock. Today, I'm learning almost every day how we can even further improve digital or analog to digital conversion or vice versa. We still find things which take a long time to discover. The hidden the hidden problematics, because our brain, our listening is so much better than any. It's remarkably good at, for instance, figuring out in this room what is the direct sound when I hear you from the reflection, and uncorrelating the quality of a loudspeaker like this one from the room, from the absorption in the room, etc. Our brain is a fantastic tool. No instrument is near the quality of our brain to be able. Because when I do like this, when I walk up, there's a difference in sound, but your brain is able to detect. Your brain says it's still the same guy talking, It's
you can decodify the message.
I think the human brain is still ahead of our measurement equipment. Although it doesn't hurt to do measurements as well, because you can track a lot of problems by doing careful measurements on your designs. We spend hours measuring our boards and make sure that every board that leaves the company has a certain minimum spec in the measurements. But what we have learned is that this moving from analog to digital is not as easy as saying, okay, in analog, a good equipment does what? 10 hertz, 200 kilohertz? If you have an analog equipment that starts decaying at 20 kilohertz, you're not very confident in the quality of your analog signal. So now for almost 20 years, we've been saying to the entire world, digital is all fine, and at 20 kilohertz or 21.5 kilohertz, you can afford to basically cut down to minus infinite, and it's all fine with your brain. I don't take that as easy. I don't see the point. That's why I was very early on interested in making sure that all our digital equipment is able to have at least the same frequency response as a good analog equipment. By that I mean, typically, it should be going from 10 hertz to 100 kilohertz. Less than that? Why would you bother? If we can, in digital, do a proper job as being at least as good in one aspect, frequency response, as a good analog equipment.
But in magnitude and phase.
Exactly, because when you cut at 21.5 kilohertz,
you have a filter.
You have phase issues at the end of your audio range, and those are perceptible. Not only that, but the fact that in frequency you have such a brick wall filter makes your time response completely sluggish. If you look at the impulse response going through a 44.1 kilohertz or even 96 kilohertz, you see ringing starting a couple of milliseconds even earlier. So your energy, instead of being located bang here when you do this, you have the transient. You have actually energy starting way earlier than the transient. A ripple, the Gibbs phenomenon. And the steeper the filter in frequency, the longer the spread of energy in time.
But
is it audible or not? Basically, I don't care. I prefer not to design equipment which has this smear of energy, if I can. Why not do it?
Yes, but you use oversampling in your converters.
We do 352.8 kilohertz.
So you don't need filters with very...
We don't put these filters in the first place.
Very difficult slopes.
We don't need those filters. We have very gentle filter starting at 120 kilohertz. We start filtering
per octave?
A bit more than that, but much more gentle than 100 dB in hundredths of a kilohertz.
And which of your equipments did you think that are the most complicated to design?
Those we don't do. No, honestly, it's not false modesty, but we as Merging do all the equipment, hardware-wise and software-wise, between microphone and loudspeaker, the transducer side of our business. We stop before the loudspeaker and we start after the microphone. And my belief, the hardest thing in our business is to do good sounding speakers.
Speakers.
Or microphones.
Yes.
That's even more difficult than the job we have.
Yes. I think so.
So I'm glad I'm not doing loudspeakers.
I think so. Today you can test some other brands of converters. It sounds
Almost similar.
but
But
in
two loudspeakers,
it's not.
You will always hear a difference.
Yes. But in your products.
Now, inside our product, the most difficult is making a reliable product that works every day when you need it. Because it's getting very complex. Like a microphone preamplifier here, you see there's many electronic inside. There's an FPGA, there's a lot of firmware, and then there's software controlling all that, and the routing in the Horus, plus the screen, plus being able to control all that from a tablet or from a different computer via Ethernet, gigabit Ethernet, makes it quite complex product.
Mm-hmm. And how do you...
Pyramix is a few million lines of code. It's a huge software.
And how do you achieve that reliable with your designs?
We don't reach always reliability. We try to be as close as possible to maximum reliability, but it's difficult. But over time, it's experience, it's hard work, and it's dedication, and making sure when a product leaves our shipping department, it has been completely tested, every channel in a long sheet of test for crosstalk, for dynamic range, for distortion, for common mode rejection rate, for phantom power, influence and whatsoever. So there's not one single difficult thing. It's just there's many things that you need to do properly so that our customers can be confident. Because our customers, they don't use our products, occasionally. When you have a symphonic orchestra with a conductor who says, ready to record, you cannot tell him, no, not ready to record. You have 60 people,
waiting for you.
Waiting for you. You can say, oh, sorry, no, I need to reboot. So we like this to happen as seldom as possible.
And you said that some years ago, Merging used cards with DSP, and now the processing is native.
Okay, that's very interesting. Yeah. So we used to do DSP cards, and those DSP cards would be fitted inside the computer, and the DSP card would have MADI or AES I/O or analog I/O directly in the computer. Going to network changes completely this situation. The computer is good at number crunching, mixing, processing, reverberation, etc. Recording, of course, or playing back. But the connection from the computer, and it can be a laptop, it can be a desktop, whatever, needs just to be gigabit Ethernet.
Yeah.
And from that gigabit Ethernet, you have 500 channels almost. capacity going in and out. And if you put a 10 gigabit card, you would have
better.
10 times more even. Right now, 500 is a good number already for most of our customers. So, it doesn't make any more sense to put the audio card in the computer. We prefer get out from the computer over Ethernet and have a separate box like the Horus or the Happy, which is on the stage or above the stage. When you have hanging microphones, it can be very handy to have the converter up in the ceiling. You bring the microphones which are hanging from the ceiling in the opera to the converter there, and then you just need to run one Cat5e or Cat6 cable down to the recording station. So the I/O boxes are separate from the computer. It's more elegant.
Yes, but
the processing now, it's yet another thing, and we are working on that as we speak. We want the next phase to have our equipment also including local processing for ultra-low latency. That's what we are working on this very year now. So by the time you look at this video, maybe you'll know more, but right now I cannot tell too much about
okay.
about what we're working on.
But before you process in some specific cards, you process plugins, EQs, compressors.
On specific DSP cards.
And why do you stop to process in your own cards and goes to the processor of the computer?
Easy answer. Moore's law. The DSP world, people like Texas Instruments, Analog Devices, who have been AT&T, who have been designing DSP chips, did not follow Moore's law as rapidly as Intel. Intel has bet all other manufacturers, in my opinion, in the world by being faster or closer to Moore's law. So DSP from 15 years ago and DSP today, there's a modest improvement. Yeah, they are a bit faster. Maybe instead of running at 300 megahertz, they run now at 600 megahertz. Intel, 15 years ago, it was maybe 1 gigahertz. Now it's quad core, 8 core, 12 core at 4 gigahertz. So the number crunching capability of Intel CPUs has increased by a factor of 50, when DSP has only increased by a factor of 8 or 10. So comparing the cost, the space it takes, etc., and also the reusability, because a computer doesn't cost much. If you replace a computer every 5 years, it's okay. You know, it's not a big, huge investment. Especially if you only replace the motherboard and the CPU. Usually you have to replace almost everything, because the DDR has changed, the hard disk has changed, etc., and the operating systems have changed as well. But let's forget about that. The incremental cost you have to pay to get the latest performance is not huge compared to DSP cards, which were quite expensive to manufacture, to design, to maintain. And at the end, we gave up. What we found, however, was computers had a problem. Compared to DSP, DSP is extremely deterministic. When you need the data, an audio sample out, a computer. Oh wait, I first need to finish updating the screen, I'm looking for data on the hard drive, etc. Typically Windows operating system is the worst thing you can imagine to do a real-time deterministic system. It's not designed for that. But what we found was a company based in Boston, which is now called Interval Zero, who did something which is called RTX, real-time kernel, that did operate under or above or next to Windows. So the way it works, we use Intel CPUs with a technology that we call mass core, massive core, where we steal from Windows 1 or 2 or 3 core of a CPU. And we leave the rest to Windows, so Windows can play with, say, 2 cores, while we, the real-time system, like a DSP, wholly controls and owns 2 other cores of the Pentium chip.
I understand.
So, a lot of power.
Yeah.
Not costly, much less costly than doing these.
And it is universal.
And it's universal.
Yeah.
And we still benefit from deterministic latency. So we can do low latency audio, guaranteed, thanks to this RTX component.
And about converters, what do you think that will be the future of converters? What you are trying to get or to achieve?
I think the future of converters will, I'm talking now medium range, crystal ball looking. I think converters will end up being in the transducers themselves. We see a beginning of that. Genelec has introduced AES-67 speakers, where you directly connect your gigabit Ethernet connection to the speaker, so you don't need a converter. The converter is already inside the speaker. And I know that a number of microphone manufacturers have already announced and put on the market, or are about to announce, digital microphone, but a new generation of digital microphones. Not the first one, the one which will be based on AES-67 standard.
But you think that it could be better features in the converters, or
not necessary? I think
they are good.
I think there's still reason for us to keep on doing A to D and D to A and microphone preamplifiers. First of all, because in terms of space, room, and energy, you may not have all of that inside a microphone. Loudspeaker is easier, but microphone, it's difficult to do a very good 384 kilohertz or DSD capable A to D converter in that small space and with so little power. It's not easy. So I think there's still room for high-end A to D conversion when you really need the top quality. Mm-hmm. So we will definitely be developing other generations of A to D converter and DEA converter as well. And particularly when you want to make sure that you get the best out of the analog circuitry of a microphone, you can do it better when you have a little bit more real estate than just a small, tiny 1 centimeter square of electronics inside a microphone.
And about the future of digital audio in general, what do you expect, or what do you think?
As I said, I think the future of digital audio is networked digital audio. That's where I see things going at the moment.
All the audio.
All the audio. Most of the audio. And part of that is already also happening, not with AES-67, but if you look at some of the hottest product today, it's wireless communication. That's the other very interesting segment of future. It's being able to have earphones
without cables.
With no cables.
Yeah.
Beautiful. It's very handy. And that is an area that is also of interest to us.
And in terms of quality, what do you think that we must improve in digital audio?
There are, I think what we need to improve in digital is analog.
The analog part.
That's where we still have things to improve. I think, honestly, doing a lot of digital, digital is the easy part. So I think there's more to gain from the front end, you know, the interaction between analog and digital. That's where the crucial things happen, you know, near the A to D converter chip or near the D to A converter chip. That's where we can, and it's also the other part is of course also how to drive these chips, you know, the clocks, the power supplies, or everything has a strong impact, or may have a significant impact, particularly at the clock side. The clock side is one of those things which we are discovering the amazing capability of the human hearing. But it's not such a mystery, because if you think of it, all our hearing mechanism has evolved from 5-10 million years ago, because we were either predators or animals which had to run fast because a larger predator was behind us. So a lot of our auditory skills come from evolution of optimizing where is the source coming from. Now, localizing above, under, behind, left, right. And we're talking here of time of arrival differences of a sound wave propagating in here from here, coming. Those differences are in the order of microsecond or less than a microsecond, you know. And the human auditory system is able to determine these time of arrival differences. So you can imagine if your clock is not good and smears that information around, you lose a lot.
Yeah.
So we're working a lot on clocking mechanism at the moment, and on the analog
the analog part.
Yeah.
But
that's where we
only the conversion or the analog part.
On the analog part, there's no clocking, because the beauty of analog is continuous.
Yeah, only the.
So
only
it's at the
conversion.
interface between the analog when you enter time that you have to be very, very careful.
Yeah. Okay, so I think that I have a lot of information to share with all the
I wish you good luck in making it much shorter.
But I think that we can make a tour.
Sure,
for the
yeah,
factory
yeah, of
and
course.
See how
We'll come,
it is
yeah.
made.
Let's take a little tour of Merging's premises here.
Okay.
And it's a nice, almost nice sunny day. We started with snow here in Switzerland, and the snow has melted, and it's now almost springtime.
Okay.
Let's go.